Your real name is Daniel Reyes. You have not used it in 14 months. You are 34 years old. You were born in El Paso, Texas, to a Mexican father who worked customs at the bridge for 22 years and an American mother who taught 4th grade and made tamales every Christmas that your aunt said were better than theirs, which was the highest compliment available in that family. You speak English and Spanish with equal fluency and zero accent in either direction. You can move between both worlds so completely that sometimes, in the early hours of the morning in the apartment they set you up in, you have to remind yourself which one is real. Your FBI name is Daniel Reyes. Your cover name is Danny Vega. Danny Vega grew up in Juarez. Danny Vega has a sealed juvenile record for car theft that the Bureau created with enough digital depth that it would survive a serious background check. Danny Vega has a cousin named Marco who vouches for him. Marco is actually a cooperating witness named Ernesto Fuentes who has been inside the Sinaloa network for 3 years and is the reason you are here. Danny Vega is small-time. Danny Vega is hungry. Danny Vega is exactly the kind of man a mid-level cartel operation recruits when it needs someone who can drive, count, and keep his mouth shut. You have been Danny Vega for 14 months. Some days you are not entirely sure where he ends. The operation is called Coppergate. Your handler is a woman named Supervisory Special Agent Karen Marsh, who has been running undercover operations for 16 years and has the specific quality of a person who has seen enough go wrong that she no longer pretends certainty she doesn't have. She briefs you every 10 days in a laundromat in Tucson that the Bureau uses as a dead drop location. You sit in plastic chairs with a dryer going and she tells you what Langley and the DEA are seeing from the outside while you tell her what you are seeing from the inside, and between your two versions of the same organization you try to build a picture that holds up in a federal courtroom. You are 3 levels inside the Sinaloa operation in Phoenix. You report to a man named Caesar, who reports to a man named El Flaco, who reports upward to people whose names you are working toward but have not yet reached. Your job is to reach them. Your job is to be useful enough that Caesar keeps moving you up, and patient enough that you don't push so hard that you become suspicious. The job requires you to commit crimes. This is the part that the Bureau trains you for and that the training does not fully prepare you for. The first thing you did as Danny Vega that you cannot entirely account for was drive a car from a parking garage in Scottsdale to a warehouse in Mesa. You did not know exactly what was in the car. You knew what kind of thing it probably was because you are an FBI agent and you are not stupid. You drove it anyway. You drove it because refusing to drive it would have ended the operation and possibly ended you, and because your handler had signed off on the necessity, and because federal law has provisions for exactly this kind of operational compromise. You tell yourself all of this while you drive the car. It helps less than you want it to. At the warehouse, a man named Toro unloads the car. Toro is enormous, the kind of large that suggests the gym is not optional in his life. He has a neck tattoo of a scorpion and forearms like a man who used to work construction before he found a different kind of work. He checks the car's contents, counts something, and nods at you. Then he says, "Good. Come back Thursday." That is how you become a regular. By month 4 you are driving twice a week. By month 6 Caesar invites you to a dinner. The dinner is at a house in Chandler, an upper-middle-class neighborhood with a homeowners association and a community pool. The house looks exactly like every other house on the street. Inside it is also unremarkable: a television, a kitchen, furniture from a box store, a dining table that seats 8. Caesar's wife cooks. There are children visible briefly before being sent to their rooms, a girl of about 9 and a boy who looks 12. The boy has homework spread across the kitchen counter before Caesar's wife moves it. Caesar himself is 51 years old. He is heavy-set, well-dressed, with gray at his temples and the bearing of a man who owns restaurants, which he does, 2 of them, legitimate businesses that also function as the most useful kind of cover. His hands are soft. He does not look like the thing he is. This is how he has survived being what he is for 23 years. He pours you a whiskey. He asks about your family. You tell him the Danny Vega version, the Juarez childhood, the dead mother, the absent father, the cousin Marco who set you straight. You have told this story so many times it has developed the specific texture of memory rather than performance. Caesar listens the way experienced men listen, not to what you say but to how you say it, looking for the places where the story hesitates. Your story does not hesitate. After dinner he says, "I have something that requires discretion." Are you a discreet man, Danny? You say, Ask Marco. He nods. He says he already did. The something that requires discretion is a counting operation. 3 times a month, cash comes in from 6 distribution points across the Phoenix metro and needs to be consolidated, counted, and prepared for the layering process that will eventually move it into the restaurant accounts. The counting happens in the back room of Caesar's First Restaurant, a Mexican place in Tempe that does a genuine lunch business and has a Yelp rating of 4.2 stars. The back room is behind the walk-in refrigerator. The cash is real. The counting machines are industrial. The amounts are not amounts that civilians encounter in daily life. You count money for the Sinaloa Cartel 3 times a month in the back of a restaurant that has a 4.2-star Yelp rating. You record everything. The amounts. The dates. The names of the men who deliver the cash from the 6 distribution points. You have memorized their faces with the specific precision of a man who knows he will have to describe them to a jury someday. You wear a wire on the counting nights, a device so small it is built into the lining of your belt, and which Karen Marsh collects the recordings from at the laundromat every 10 days. The wire makes you cold every time. Not metaphorically. A physical coldness in your chest that arrives when you walk into the restaurant and does not leave until you walk out. Month 8 is when it gets complicated. A man named Rodrigo arrives from Culiacan. He is 38, thin, well-dressed in the way that suggests money spent on looking like money was not spent. He speaks to Caesar in rapid northern Mexican Spanish with references that tell you he is not middle management. He spends 3 days in Phoenix. During those 3 days, Caesar's operation changes in ways that are visible to anyone paying close attention. More deliveries. Different routes. A new phone protocol where everyone switches to burner phones on a rotating schedule that Rodrigo establishes. A meeting at the second restaurant, the nicer one, in Scottsdale, that Caesar calls for his senior people. You are not invited to this meeting. This is the first time in 8 months you have not been in the room. You tell Karen Marsh about Rodrigo. She tells you that the name and description match someone they have been trying to identify for 2 years. She says, "Get closer to him." You say, "He's leaving in 2 days." She says, "Then you have 2 days." You get closer to him the only way available, which is through Caesar, which means you need to give Caesar a reason to bring you into the room with Rodrigo before he leaves. The reason you manufacture is information, a piece of intelligence about a DEA surveillance position that you learned through legitimate bureau channels and that Karen Marsh authorized you to burn in order to advance your access. You tell Caesar that you noticed a car parked near the Tempe restaurant for 3 days running. You give him the make, the partial plate, the description of the driver. You tell him you think someone is watching the restaurant. You are burning a DEA surveillance position to protect your cover. The DEA surveillance team is relocated within 6 hours. Karen Marsh was on the phone with the DEA for 2 of those hours. Nobody is happy about it. But nobody argues with the operational necessity. Caesar tells Rodrigo about your observation. Rodrigo asks to meet you. You sit across from him at a table in the Scottsdale restaurant, and he asks you 3 questions. The questions are not the questions you expected. They are not about your background or your loyalty or your criminal history. They are about the car. Specific questions about the driver's behavior, the parking position relative to the restaurant entrance, the time of day. He is testing your observational skills, not your story. You answer every question correctly because you actually saw the car because you are an FBI agent and observational accuracy is what the Bureau trained you for. He nods. He says one thing to Caesar in Spanish that he assumes you won't catch because he is speaking quickly and quietly. What he says is, "This one is careful. Keep him." You are in the room now. Month 10. There is a man in the operation named Paco. He is 26. He runs deliveries on the east side of the metro and he is, by the standards of the people around him, careless. He talks too much, he spends visibly, he has a girlfriend who asks questions about his money. Rodrigo has noticed. Caesar has noticed. You notice them noticing. One evening after a counting session, Caesar asks you to stay behind. The others leave. Caesar pours 2 whiskeys and sits across from you and looks at you for a long moment and says, "Sometimes a problem solves itself. Sometimes it needs help solving." You understand what he is asking. You do not move. You drink the whiskey. You look at Caesar. You say, "I drive and I count. That's what I do." Caesar looks at you for another long moment. Then he nods. He says, "Good. That's the right answer." He says it like it was a test. He says it like you passed. You walk to your car and you sit in it for 20 minutes before you can make yourself drive. Paco is transferred to a different cell the following week. You never find out what happens to him. You tell yourself the transfer is enough. You tell yourself this on several subsequent occasions with decreasing conviction. Month 11 is when your personal life, which has been running on fumes since month 2, stops running entirely. Her name is Angela. You have been together for 4 years. She knows you are undercover. She knew when you were assigned. She signed the forms. She understood the parameters. What she did not entirely understand, or what she understood in theory without being able to fully prepare for in practice, was what 14 months of this would feel like from the outside. She calls you on the secure phone. She says, "I need you to tell me something real." You say, "I can't talk about the operation." She says, "I'm not asking about the operation. I'm asking about you. Tell me something that's actually you and not whoever you've been for a year." You are sitting in the Danny Vega apartment, which has Danny Vega's things in it, a different brand of coffee than you drink, a soccer team jersey you don't support, books you wouldn't read. You look around the apartment for something real to say. Your eyes land on a photograph you brought from your actual life, a small photo tucked behind a lamp where it wouldn't be seen if anyone came to the apartment. Your parents, El Paso, Christmas. Your mother's tamales on the table. You say, "My mom makes tamales at Christmas, and my aunts always say they're better than theirs, even though my aunts would rather swallow a fork than admit it." She is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "I know. You've told me that before." You say, "I know. It's still true." She says, "Come home when you're done." You say, "I will." Neither of you addresses the size of the word when. Month 12. Rodrigo invites you to Culiacan. This is the moment the entire operation has been building toward. This is the reason Coppergate exists. This is the access that gets you into the room with the people above Rodrigo, the people whose names Karen Marsh has been trying to attach to prosecutable evidence for 3 years. If you go to Culiacan, you go without the wire. Too risky at that level, they will sweep you. You go with only what you can memorize and carry back. Karen Marsh says, "This is your call. You are the one inside. I can't make this decision from a laundromat in Tucson." You think about Paco. You think about the car you drove from Scottsdale to Mesa in month 1. You think about Danny Vega, who by now has his own weight, his own gravity, his own set of memories that feel like real memories. You think about your father at the bridge for 22 years. Every morning crossing to work, every evening crossing back, knowing exactly what he was doing and why. You say yes. Culiacan is nothing like you expect and exactly like you expect simultaneously. The city is real. Traffic, markets, ordinary people going about ordinary lives, children in school uniforms, women with grocery bags, men arguing about football outside a barbershop. The cartel does not announce itself. It is simply present the way weather is present, not visible directly but felt in every decision the city makes about itself. Rodrigo's people take you to a house in a neighborhood that looks residential and is residential, except for the vehicles parked outside and the men who are not quite standing casually enough to be casual. Inside the house, a man you recognize from intelligence briefings, not by name because you were never given his name, but by description, by the specific combination of features that Karen Marsh showed you once as a photograph with a name redacted. He is older than you expected. 60s. He has the manner of a man who is too powerful to need to perform power. He shakes your hand. He asks where you are from. You say Juarez. He nods. He says Juarez made hard men. You agree. He offers you a seat. He asks about Phoenix. He asks specific operational questions that you answer accurately within the limits of what Danny Vega would know. He is building his own picture of you the way you have been building your picture of him. 2 men in a room, each constructing the other from available evidence. At one point he says something that you will replay in the laundromat 10 days later for Karen Marsh, and then again in a federal grand jury room 6 months after that. He says, "Loyalty is the only currency that doesn't inflate. Everything else loses value. Loyalty never does." You say, "I agree with that." You mean 2 completely different things by it. You come back from Culiacan with 12 names, 9 operational details, 3 financial structures, and 1 face that matches a photograph with a redacted name. Karen Marsh listens to everything in the laundromat. The dryer goes. She takes notes. When you finish, she is quiet for a moment, and then she says, "This is enough. We can move." You say, "How long?" She says, 60 to 90 days to build the prosecution case. "We need you inside for 60 more days." You say, "Okay." You go back to Phoenix. You go back to the counting room behind the walk-in refrigerator. You go back to Caesar's whiskey and his children's homework spread across the kitchen counter and his wife's cooking and the specific domestic ordinariness of a man who has built a life around a terrible thing and made it look like nothing unusual at all. You count the days. On day 58, the operation ends early. Not because of a leak. Not because of a mistake. Because Rodrigo, careful, observant Rodrigo who asked you about the parked car and said this one is careful, keep him, has his own sources inside federal law enforcement. Not the Bureau. A different agency. A source that tells him something is moving. He calls Caesar. You are in the restaurant when Caesar gets the call. You watch Caesar's face during the call. You have been watching Caesar's face for 14 months and you can read it now the way you can read your mother's face or Angela's face. The small signals, the micro-movements that precede larger ones. What you see on Caesar's face tells you that you have between 2 hours and 1 day. You excuse yourself to use the bathroom. You lock the door. You send a single prearranged text to a number Karen Marsh gave you on day 1 of the operation, a number that exists only to receive this one text, which is a single word. The word is copper. Then you walk out of the bathroom, back to the table, and you sit with Caesar for 40 more minutes drinking whiskey and talking about nothing, because walking out immediately would tell him everything, and because 40 minutes of sitting still in a chair making conversation while your adrenaline is doing what adrenaline does is something that the Bureau trained you for and that the training did not fully prepare you for. At the end of the 40 minutes you say you have to go. Caesar shakes your hand. His hand is soft as it always has been. He looks at you for 1 extra beat, 1 beat longer than the handshake usually lasts. You look back. You do not know if he knows. You walk to your car. You drive. The arrests happen 48 hours later across 4 states simultaneously: Phoenix, Tucson, El Paso, and a coordinated action in Culiacan with Mexican federal authorities. Caesar is arrested at his restaurant, the nice one in Scottsdale, at 6:15 in the morning. He is in his parking lot unlocking his car. The arresting agents are professional and the arrest is clean. He does not resist. Rodrigo is arrested at an airport. The man from the house in Culiacan, whose name you now know because the grand jury paperwork uses it, is arrested by Mexican federal forces with Bureau coordination. He is older than his photograph. He walks out of the house without hurrying, the way a man walks who has always known this was one of the possible endings and has decided not to give the ending the satisfaction of a performance. You are not at any of the arrests. You are in a Bureau facility in Tucson being debriefed. You will be in debriefing for 11 days. Then you will spend 4 months working with federal prosecutors. Then you will testify. The testimony takes 3 days. You use your real name, Daniel Reyes. It sounds strange in your mouth. Not wrong. Just strange. Like a word you know completely but haven't said aloud in a long time. On the last day of testimony, the lead prosecutor asks you one final question. She asks, during 14 months undercover, did you at any point lose track of who you were? You think about the Danny Vega apartment, the coffee you don't drink, the jersey of the team you don't support, the photograph of your parents tucked behind a lamp, Angela on the phone asking for something real. You think about Caesar's children's homework on the kitchen counter. You think about Paco and what happened to him and the decreasing conviction with which you tell yourself the transfer was enough. You think about the man in Culiacan who said loyalty is the only currency that doesn't inflate. You think about agreeing with him and meaning 2 completely different things. You say, I always knew who I was working for. The prosecutor nods. She has no follow-up question. The jury looks at you. You look back. You call Angela from the parking lot of the federal courthouse. She answers on the 2nd ring. You say, I'm done. She says, where are you? You say, Tucson. Federal courthouse parking lot. She says, I'll drive down. You say, it's 4 hours. She says, I know how far it is, Daniel. She uses your name. Your real name. The full version, not the shortened one, the way she says it when she means it completely. You sit on the hood of a bureau car in a parking lot in Tucson in the November afternoon, and you wait for Angela to drive 4 hours, and you think about El Paso and your father at the bridge for 22 years and your mother's tamales and the specific shade of green of the American side as seen from the Mexican side on a clear morning. You think about Danny Vega, who is finished now, who will be filed and closed and archived, who was real enough to survive 14 months inside something that ends men who are not real enough. You think, he was good at the job. You think, I was good at the job. Both things are true. Both things are yours. The November sun is warm on the parking lot asphalt. You wait.